All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is the zero product property. And what this says, this is the definition you get out of the book. If A times B equals 0, then either A equals 0 or B equals 0. And hopefully you're kind of like, well, duh, that's probably true, right? If we know two things are being multiplied and we know that their product is 0, meaning it equals 0, then one or the other has to be 0 in order for it to be equal to 0. So where we're going to use this is when we have something in factored form, usually what we have is something like this, x plus 3, and we'll say x minus 4 equals 0. Factored form. But notice, this takes almost the exact same form of a times b equals 0. This is kind of like my a times my b, and that's why we always have 0 here, is so we can take advantage of this zero product property. And so what we say is well, there's an x value that I can plug into here to make this parentheses 0. And if this parentheses is 0, that will give us a solution to this factored form, right? Because if this parentheses is 0, it doesn't matter what number this is, because anything times 0 is 0. So if I can get 0 in this parentheses, actually in the other parentheses as well, then this whole left side of the equation was going to be equal to 0, okay? And so I would get 0 times any number, doesn't matter, and I would get 0 equals 0, and then boom, we'd have a solution to that factored form. Well, the same could be true if I said for the other side. Well, what if the other side, I plugged in a different x value, and I can make this side 0, right? So, and it wouldn't matter what this number is, because 0 times anything is just 0. So I would get a second solution to this quadratic when it's in factored form, okay? And so you might have already kind of been thinking, well, what x value is that going to be? What x value can I plug into there to make just this 0? Kind of ignoring that x minus 4. What x value can I plug into there to make that 0? And hopefully you've figured it out. It's x equals negative 3. Right? If I plug in negative 3 into here, then I'll have negative 3 plus 3, and that's 0. Therefore, this is a solution to this quadratic. Okay? And remember we said quadratics have the form of x squared, and they have two answers. And the other answer is going to come from this parentheses. What x value can I plug into here? Now we're going to ignore the x plus 3. What x value can I plug into here to make that 0? And the answer would be x equals 4. 4 minus 4 will give me 0. And I don't care what happens over here on the left side, because I know anything times 0 is 0. So this left side doesn't even matter to me. If that's 0, the whole thing is 0. And so the zero product property allows us to figure out this answer and this answer because we are in this format. A times B equals 0. Okay? Let's take a look at some more problems here on the next page. What if I had like x plus 7 and x minus 1 equals 0? I want to solve this. I want to finish solving this using the zero product property. So I'm going to have an answer that comes from this parentheses, and I'm going to have an answer that comes from this parentheses. And you may have already kind of figured out a pattern here with what's going on. I have a plus 7 in here, and so what am I going to plug into here to make that 0? Well, it's going to be its opposite. If this is a plus 7, its opposite is going to add to it to make 0. And so it would be negative 7. And same thing over here. We have a minus 1. Whatever its opposite is, I could plug into here for x and make it 0. The opposite of minus 1 is positive 1, and there's my two answers. Okay, again, in Khan Academy, it also talks about, it also wants you to do the same thing that we talked about in my last video, which was the smaller x needs to go in this box, and the larger x needs to go in this box. So that would be negative 7 here and positive 1 there. Just make sure you look at these two words right there and make sure you get the right number in the right box. Otherwise, you're going to get that wrong and have to do the whole comm practice over again. Okay? Let's go a little bit harder now. What if I had, well, actually, let's do another one that's a little bit easier. What if I had x minus 6 and we'll say x minus 5? What two values or what two solutions will come from these two parentheses? An answer will come from this parentheses and an answer will come from that parentheses. And so what we have is x minus, if I plug in 6 to here, that will give me x equals 6. And if I plug this answer into here, or get the answer from this parentheses, I would get x equals 5. Now, if you can't see that, if you can't kind of see, oh, just looking at this and know that it's positive 6, or just looking at this and know that it's positive 5, let's take a look at a different way to do it. And this will help us with what we have next. I could literally set this equal to 0. Set up kind of a side equation, x minus 6 equals 0, and I could do the same thing for x minus 5. And I could also set that equal to 0. And then I can solve each one of these little side equations for x, and it should give me this answer here and this answer here. Let's take a look here. So we add 6 here, we add 6 here, and we get x equals 6. Yeah, there's our 6, and if I come over here and I do plus 5 and I do plus 5, I get x equals 5. So if you can't, just looking at the parentheses, know that it's 6, or just looking at this parentheses, know that it's 5, you can always just set them equal to 0 and then just solve that equation. And that's how you would get kind of your answers in without really having to use any mental math. Now we're going to kind of use this idea with this next problem. What if I had 2x plus 3 and like x plus 1 equals 0? Okay, well, this one, you know, if you could use mental math, that one's probably going to be pretty easy, right? That's just x equals negative 1. Okay. Now, this next problem, what x value can I plug into here so that when I multiply it by 2 and then add 3, I get 0? That one's not so easy to know what x value to plug in. So let's use that whole idea of setting it equal to 0 and then just solving that little side equation like we did right here and right here. Okay, might be a little bit easier to do it that way rather than just kind of maybe thinking in your head. So we're going to subtract 3 on both sides, and we get 2x equals negative 3. And then we would just divide both sides by negative or positive 2. And so this answer would be 3/2. All right. Now keep in mind, Khan Academy again, I know I've said this like 10 times now in these videos, but they want the smaller x and the larger x here. Now this one might be a little bit tricky because these numbers are kind of close in value. But this is negative 1 and 1/2. This one's negative 1. Therefore, the smaller x is the one that's the larger negative. And so you would put that here. I'd recommend not putting it as a mixed number. I would recommend putting it in as negative 3/2, like that. I think it's probably going to be easier on Khan. Let's take a look at one more, and then I'll be done. All right, let's take a look at something like 2x minus 4 and 3x plus, no, let's go minus 5. Minus 5. Let's go there. All right, equals 0. So again, we'll set this equal to 0 because I don't know if it's that easy to figure that out off the top of your head. Maybe it is. But just to be on the safe side, maybe we just set these up just so we can maybe use our algebra and be definitely sure of what the answer is. So again, add 4 to both sides, and then you'll get divide both sides by 2. So there's my answer, first answer, x equals positive 2. And then over here, we're going to add 5, and we'll get 3x equals 5, and then divide by 3. And we should get 5/3. Okay, again, if you don't know what the smaller number is, then maybe use a calculator or something, but this is your smaller one. This is the smaller x. and that is the larger x. All right, I hope that clarified some things maybe on the common practices that you may not have understood. But again, if you have any questions, let me know, and good luck.